we had completed until the 34th chapter, and in this video we are going to start from Genesis chapter 35. Just a minute. Yeah, in the last video we had completed until the 34th chapter, and now we are going to start from the 35th chapter of the Genesis, of the book of Genesis. So, without wasting time, let us just start the session. God blesses Jacob at Bethel. God said to Jacob, "Go to Bethel at once and live there. Build an altar to me, the God who appeared to you when you were running away from your brother Esau." So Jacob said to his family and to all who were with him, "Get rid of foreign gods that you have, purify yourself and put on clean clothes. We are going to leave here and go to Bethel, where I will build an altar to the God who helped me in the time of my trouble and who has been with me everywhere I have gone." So they gave Jacob all the foreign gods that they had and also the earrings that they were wearing. He buried them beneath the oak tree near Shechem. When God, when Jacob and his sons started to leave, great fear fell on the people of the nearby towns, and they did not pursue them. Jacob came with all his people to Luz, which is now known as Bethel, in the land of Canaan. He built an altar there and named the place after the God of Bethel, because God had revealed to himself there when he was running away from his brother. Rebekah's nurse Deborah died and was buried beneath the oak south of Bethel, so it was named Oak of Weeping. When Jacob returned from Mesopotamia, God appeared to him again and blessed him. God said to him, "Your name is Jacob, but from now on it will be Israel." So God named him Israel and said to him, I am Almighty God. Have many children. Nations will be descended from you, and you will be the ancestor of kings. I will give you the land which I have gave to Abraham and to Isaac, and I'll also give it to your descendants after you. Then God left him there, and God had there where God had spoken to him. Jacob set a memorial stone and consec- consecrated it by pouring wine and olive oil on it. He named the place Bethel. The death of Rachel. Jacob and his family left Bethel, and when they were still some distance from Ephrath, the time came for Rachel to have her baby, and she was having difficult labor. When her labor pains were at their worst, the midwife said to her, "Don't be afraid, Rachel, it's another boy." She was dying and she breathed her last. She named her son Benoni, but his father named him Benjamin. When Rachel died, she was buried beside the road of Ephrath, now known as Bethlehem. Jacob set up a memorial stone there, and it still marks Rachel's grave to this day. Jacob moved on and set up his camp on the other side of the town of Eder. The sons of Jacob. When Jacob was still living in the land, Reuben had sexual intercourse with Bilhah, one of his father's concubines. Jacob heard about it and was furious. Jacob had 12 sons. The sons of Leah were Reuben, Jacob's eldest son, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Rachel's slaves, Bilhah, were Dan and Naphtali. The son of Leah's slave, Zilpah, yeah, Zilpah, were Gad and Asher. These sons were born in Mesopotamia. The death of Isaac. Jacob went to his father Isaac at Mamre near Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had lived. Isaac lived to be 180 years old and died at the ripe old age, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. The descendants of Esau. These are the descendants of Esau, also called Edom. Esau married a Canaanite woman, Ada, the daughter of Ana's son. Just a minute. The daughter of Elon the Hittite. Yeah. Aholim, Oholima, Oholibama, Oholibama, the Hivite, and Basemath, the daughter of Ishmael and the sister of Nebaioth. Ada bore Eliphaz, Basemath bore Reuel, the and Oholibama bore Jeush, Jalam, and Korah. All these sons were born to Esau in the land of Canaan. Then Esau took his wives, his sons, his daughters, and all the people of his house, together with all his livestock and all possessions he had acquired in the land of Canaan, and went away from his brother Jacob to another land. He left because the land where he and Jacob were living was not able to support them. They had too much livestock and could no longer stay together. So Esau lived in the hill country of Edom. These are the descendants of Esau, the ancestor of the Edomites. Esau's wife bore him one son, Eliphaz, and Eliphaz had five sons, Teman, Omar, Zepho, Gatam, and Kenaz, and by another wife, Timnah, he had one more son, Amalek. Esau's wife Basemath bore him one son, Reuel, and Reuel had four sons, Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. Esau's wife uh, Oholibama, the daughter of Ana's son of Zibeon, bore him three sons, Jeush, Jalam, and Korah. These are the tribes descended from Esau. Esau's first son, Eliphaz, was the ancestor of the following tribes: Teman, Omar, Zepho, Kenaz, Korah, Gatam, and Amalek. These were all descendants of Esau's wife Ada. Esau's son Reuel was the ancestor of the following tribes: Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. These were all descendants of Esau's wife Basemath. The following tribes were descended from Esau by his wife Oholibama, the daughter of Anna. Jeush, Jalam, and Korah. All these tribes were descended from Esau. The descendants of Seir. The original inhabitants of the land of Edom were divided into tribes, which traced their ancestry to the following descendants of Seir: Ahorite, Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anna, Dishon, Ezer, and Dishan. Lotan was the ancestor of the clans of Hori and Heman. Lotan had a sister named Timnah. Shobal was the ancestor of the clans of Alvan, Manahath, Ibal, Shifo, and Onam. Zibeon had two sons, Aya and Anna. This is the Anna who found the hot springs in the wilderness, who was taking care of his father's donkey. Anna was the father of Dishon, who was the ancestor of the clans of Hemdan, Ishban, Itran, and Sheran. Anna also had a daughter named Oholibama. Ezer was the ancestor of the clans of Bilhan, Zavan, and Akan. Dishan was the ancestor of the clans of Uz and Aran. These are the Horite tribes in the land of Edom: Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anna, Dishon, Ezer, and Dishan. The kings of Edom. So now we are in the 36th chapter, verse 31 to 39. Before there were any kings in Israel, the following kings ruled over the land of Edom in succession: Bela son of Beor from Dinhaba, Jobab son of Zerah from Bozrah, Husham from the region of Teman, Hadad son of Bedad from Avith. He defeated the Midianites in a battle in the country of Moab. Samla from Masreka, Shaul from Rehoboth on the river, Baal Hanna son of Ashbor. Hadad from Pau, his wife was Mehetabel, the daughter of Matred and granddaughter of Mezahab. Esau was the ancestor of the following Edomite tribes: Timnah, Alva, Jethet, Oholibama, Elah, Pinon, Kenaz, Teman, Mibzar, Magidel, and Iram. The area where each of these tribes lived was known by the name of the tribe. Joseph and his brothers. Now we are in chapter number 37. Jacob continued to live in the country of Canaan, where his father had lived. And this is the story of Jacob's family. Joseph, a young man of 17, took care of the sheep and goats with his brothers and the sons of Bilhah Zilpah, his father's concubines. He brought he brought bad reports to his father about what his brothers were doing. Jacob loved Joseph more than all his other sons because he had been born to him when he was old. He made a long robe with full sleeves for him. When his brother saw that their father when his brother saw that their father loved Joseph more than he loved him, they hated their brother so much that they would not speak to him in a friendly manner. One night Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, they hated him even more. He said, listen to the dream I had. We were all in the field uh, trying, tying up sheaves of wheat. When my sheaf got up and stood up straight, yours formed a circle round of mine and bowed down to me. So obviously, if the younger brother who comes and says to us, "So I had a dream, you all were tying up sheaves, including me, and suddenly my sheaf stood up and your sheaves came around me, my sheaf, and they bowed down." Then obviously the elder ones would get angry, and the same way the elder brothers of Joseph got angry, and one night, and they say that, "Do you think you are going to be a king and rule over us?" His brothers asked. So they hated him even more because of his dreams and because of what he said about them. Then Joseph had another dream, and he said to his brothers, "I had another dream in which I saw the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowing down to me." He also told the dream to his father, and his father scolded him. "What kind of dream is that? Do you think that your mother, your brothers, and I are going to come and bow down to you?" Joseph's brother were jealous of him, but his father kept thinking about the whole matter. Joseph is sold and taken to Egypt. So now we are in the 37th chapter, verse 12. One day when Joseph's brother had gone uh, to Shechem to take care of their father's flock, Jacob said to Joseph, "I want you to go to Shechem where your brothers are taking care of the flock." Joseph answered, I am ready." His father said, "Go and see if your brothers are safe and if the flock is all right. Then come back and tell me." So his father sent him on his way from the valley of Hebron. Joseph arrived at Shechem and was wandering about in the hill country when a man saw him and asked him, "What are you looking for?" "I am looking for my brothers who are taking care of their flocks," he answered. "Can you tell me where they are?" The man answered, "They have already left. I heard them say that they were going to Dothan." So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted against him and decided to kill him. So just think what a uh, grievous situation is this. Like the elder brothers planning to kill the younger brother. So this is what taking place over here. So they decided to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes the dreamer." So they are telling him as the dreamer because he he goes on saying many dreams. So come on now, let's kill him and throw his body into one of the dry wells. We can say that a wild animal killed him. They will see what becomes of his. Then we will see what becomes of all his dreams. Reuben heard them and tried to save Joseph. "Let's not kill him," he said. "Just throw him into the well in the wilderness, but don't hurt him." He said this planning to save him from them, and send him back to his father. When Joseph came up with his brothers, they ripped off his long robes with full sleeves. They took him and threw him into the well, which was dry. While they were eating, they suddenly saw a group of Ishmaelites traveling from Gilead to Egypt. Their camels were loaded with spices and resins. Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain by killing our brother and covering up the murder? Let's sell him to these Ishmaelites, then we won't have to hurt him. After all, he is our brother, our flesh and blood." His brothers agreed, and when some Midianite traders came by the brothers pulled Joseph out of the well and sold him for 20 pieces of silver to the Ishmaelites. We took him, who took him to Egypt. When Reuben came back to the well and found that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes in sorrow. He returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is not there. What I am going to do?" Then they killed a goat and dipped Joseph's robe in the blood. They took the robe to their father and said, "We found this. Does it belong to your son?" He recognized it and said, "Yes, it is his. Some wild animals has killed him. My son Joseph has been torn to pieces." Jacob tore his clothes in sorrow and put on sackcloth. He mourned for his son a long time. All his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "I will go down to the world of dead still mourning for my son." So he continued to mourn for his son Joseph. Meanwhile, in Egypt, the Midianites had sold Joseph to Potiphar, one of the king's officers, who was the captain of the palace guard. Judah and Tamar. About that time, Judah left his brothers and went to stay with a man named Hira, who was from the town of Adullam. There, Judah met a Canaanite girl whose father was named Shua. He married her and bore him a son, whom he named Er. She became pregnant again and bore another son and named him Onan. Again she had a son and named him Shelen. Judah was Ashib's. Judah was at Ashib when the boy was born. For his first son Judah got a wife whose name was Tamar. Er's conduct was evil and it displeased the Lord. So the Lord killed him. Then Judah said to Er's brother Onan, "Go and sleep with your brother's widow. Fulfill your obligation to her as her husband's brother, so that your brother may have descendants." But Onan knew that the children would not belong to him, so whenever he had intercourse with his brother's widow, he let the semen spill on the ground, so that there would be no children for his brother. What he did displeased the Lord, and the Lord killed him also. Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, "Return to your father's house and remain a widow until my son Shelon grows up." He said this because he was afraid that Shelon would be killed, as his brothers had been. So Tamar went back home. After some time, Judah's wife died. When he had finished the time of mourning, when he had finished the time of mourning, he and his friends Hira of Adullam went to Timnah, where his sheep were being sheared. Someone told Tamar that her father-in-law was going to Timnah to shear his sheep. So she changed from the widow's clothes she had been wearing, covered his face with a veil, and sat down at the entrance to Enaim, a town on the road of Timnah. As she well knew, Judah's youngest son Shelah had not grown up, and she would not be, and yet she had not been given to him in marriage. When Judah saw her, he thought that she was a prostitute, because she had her face covered. He went over to her at the side of the road and said, "All right, how much do you charge?" He did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, "What will you give me?" He answered, "I will send you a young goat from my flock." She said, "All right, if you give me something to keep as a pledge until you send the goat." "What shall I give you as a pledge?" he asked. She answered, "Your seal with its cord and the stick you are carrying." He gave them to her. Then they had intercourse, and she became pregnant. Tamar went home, took off her veil, and put her widow's clothes back. Judah sent his friend Hira to take the goat and get back from the woman the articles he had pledged, but Hira could not find her. He asked some men at Enaim, "Where is the prostitute who was here by the road?" "There has never been a prostitute here," they said. He returned to Judah and said, I couldn't find her." The men at that place said that there had never been a prostitute there. Judah said, "Let her keep the things. We don't want people to laugh at us. I didn't try to pay her, but you couldn't find her. I did try to pay her, but you couldn't find her." About 3 months later, someone said to Judah, "Your daughter-in-law Tamar has been acting like a whore, and now she is pregnant." Judah ordered, "Take her out and burn her to death." As she was being taken out, she sent word to her father-in-law, I am pregnant by the man who owes these things. Look at them and see whose they are. The seal with its cord and this stick. Judah recognized them and said, she is in the right. I have failed in my obligation to her. I should have given her my son Shelah in marriage, and Judah never had intercourse with her again. When the time came for her to give birth, it was discovered that she was going to have twins. While she was in labor, one of them put out an arm. The midwife caught it, tied a red thread round it, and said, this is the one who was born first. But he pulled his arm back, and his brother was born first. Then the midwife said, so this is how you break your way out. So he was named Perez. Then his brother was born with the red thread on his arm, and he was named Zerah. So now we are in Genesis chapter 39. Now the Ishmaelites had taken Joseph to Egypt and sold him to Potiphar, one of king's officers, who was the captain of the palace guard. The Lord was with Joseph and made him successful. He lived in the house of Egyptian master, who saw that the Lord was with Joseph and had made him successful in everything he did. Potiphar was pleased with him and made him his personal servant. So he put him in charge of his house and everything he owned. So just think how much trustworthy Joseph must have been, that Potiphar makes him in charge of everything in his house and everything he owned, and he keeps him as his personal servant. So from then on, because of Joseph, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian, and everything that he had in his house and in his fields was blessed. Potiphar handed over everything he had to take care to the care of Joseph, and did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. Joseph was well built and good looking, and after a while his master's wife began to desire Joseph and asked him to go to bed with her. He refused and said to her, look, my master does not have to concern himself with anything in the house because I am here. He has put me in charge of everything he has. I have as much as authority in this house as he has, and he has not kept back anything from me except you. How then could I do such an immoral thing and sin against God? Although she asked Joseph day after day, he would not go to bed with her. But one day when Joseph went into the house to do work, none of the house servants was there. She caught him by his robe and said, come to bed with me, but he escaped and ran outside, leaving his robe in her hand. When she saw that he had left his robe and had run out of the house, she called to her house servants and said, look at this. This Hebrew that my husband brought to the house is insulting us. He came into my room and tried to rape me, but I screamed as loud as I could. When he heard me scream, he ran outside, leaving his robe beside me. She kept his robe with her until Joseph's master came home. Then she told him the same story. So she just gives a fake story about Joseph and brings all the blame on Joseph, so that there would be a hatred between Potiphar and Joseph. Joseph's master was furious and had Joseph arrested. So as expected, Joseph was arrested and put in the prison where the king's prisoners were kept. And there he stayed. But the Lord was with Joseph and blessed him, so that the jailer was pleased with him. He put Joseph in charge of all other prisoners and made him responsible for everything that was done in the prison. The jailer did not have to look after anything for which Joseph was responsible, because the Lord was with Joseph and made him succeed in everything he did. So next, Joseph interprets the prisoner's dreams. Sometime later, the king of Egypt's wine steward and his chief baker offended the king, was angry with these two officials, and put them in prison in the house of the captain of guard, in the same place where Joseph was being kept. They spent a long time in the prison, and the captain assigned Joseph as their servant. One night, there in the prison, the wine steward and the chief baker had a dream, and the dream had different meanings. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were upset. He asked them, why do you look so worried today? They answered, each of us had a dream, and there is no one here who could explain what the dreams mean. It is God who gives the ability to interpret dreams, Joseph said. Tell me your dreams. So the wine steward said, in my dream there was a grapevine in front of me with three branches on it. As soon as the leaves came out, the blossoms appeared and the grapes ripened. I was holding the king's cup, so I took the grapes and squeezed them into the cup and gave it to him. Joseph said, "This is what it means. The three branches are 3 days. In 3 days, the king will release you, pardon you, and restore you to your position. You will give him his cup as you did before when you were in his wine steward. When you were his wine steward. But please remember me when everything is going well for you, and please be kind enough to mention me to the king and help me to get out of this prison. After all, I was kidnapped from the land of Hebrews, and even here in Egypt, I did not do anything to deserve being put in prison." When the chief baker saw that the interpretation of the wine steward's dream was favorable, he said to Joseph, "I had a dream too. I was carrying 3 bread baskets on my head. In the top basket there were all kinds of pastries for the king, and the birds were eating them." Joseph answered, "This is what it means. The 3 baskets mean 3 days. In the 3 days the king will release you and have your head cut off. Then he will hang your body on a pole and the birds will eat your flesh." On his birthday, 3 days later, the king gave a banquet for all his officials. He released his wine steward and the chief baker and brought them before his officials. So he restored the wine steward to his former position, but he executed the chief baker. It all happened just as Joseph had said. But the wine steward never gave Joseph another thought. He forgot all about him. So, in spite, Joseph has said the wine steward to say about him to the king after he has been released, but the wine steward forgets everything about him and he continues in his work. So now we are entering into Genesis chapter 41. Joseph interprets the king's dream. After 2 years had passed, the king of Egypt dreamt that he was standing by the river Nile when fat, 7 cows, fat and sleek, came up on the river and began to feed on the grass. Then 7 other cows came up. They were thin and bony. They came and stood by the other cows on the river bank, and the thin cows ate up the fat cows. Then the king woke up. He fell asleep again and had another dream. 7 years 7 years of corn full of ripe were growing on one stalk. Then 7 other years of corn sprouted thin and scorched by the desert wind, and the thin ears of corn swallowed the whole ones. Full ones. The king woke up and realized that it was a dream that he had been dreaming. In the morning he was worried, so he sent all the magicians and the wise men of Egypt. He told them his dreams, but no one could explain them to him. Then the wine steward said to the king, "I must confess today that I have done wrong. You were angry with me, chief. You were angry with me. Sorry. You were angry with the chief baker and me, and you put us in the prison in the house of captain of guard. One night each of us had a dream, and the dreams had different meanings. A young Hebrew was there with us, a slave of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams and he interpreted them for us. Things turned out just as he said. You restored me back to my position, but you executed the baker." The king sent to Joseph, and he was immediately brought from the prison. After he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came in the king's presence. And the king said to him, "I have had a dream and no one can explain it. I have been told that you can interpret dreams." Joseph answered, "I cannot, Your Majesty, but God will do a favorable interpretation." The king said, "I dreamt that I was standing in the bank of Nile when 7 cows, fat and sleek, came up off the river and began feeding on the grass." So now we are in chapter 41, verse 19. These 7 other cows came up which were thin and bony. They were the poorest cow I have ever seen anywhere in Egypt. The thin cows ate up the fat ones, but no one would have known it because they looked just as as bad as before. Then I woke up. I also dreamt that I saw 7 ears of corn which were full and ripe, growing on one stalk. Then 7 ears of corn sprouted, thin and scorched by the desert wind, and the thin ears of corn swallowed the full ones. I told the dreams to the magicians, but none of them could explain them to me. Joseph said to the king, "The two dreams mean the same thing. God has told what he is going to do you. The 7 fat cows are 7 years, and the 7 full years of corn are also 7 years. They have the same meaning. The 7 thin cows, which came up later, and the 7 thin years of corn crossed by the desert wind, are 7 years of famine. It is just as I told you. God has shown you what He is going to do. There will be 7 years of great plenty in all land of Egypt. After that, there will be 7 years of famine, and all the good years will be forgotten, because the famine will ruin the country. The time of plenty will be entirely forgotten, because the famine which follows will be so terrible. The repetition of your dream means that the matter is fixed by God, and He will make it happen in the near future. So God now helps Joseph to interpret the king's dream, and uh, so this was said by the who's that, wine steward. Yeah, the wine steward had literally forgotten about Joseph, but when king says about a dream, he remembers about the Hebrew fellow, that is Joseph, and then goes to the king and says about the Hebrew man, that is Joseph. So now Joseph has been released. Now you should choose some men with wisdom and insight and put him in charge of the country. You must also appoint other officials and take a fifth of the crop during the 7 years of plenty. Order them to collect all food during the good years that are coming, and give them authority to store up corn and in the cities and guard it. The food will be a reserve supply for the country during the 7 years of famine which are going to come on Egypt. In this way, the people will not starve. Joseph is made the governor over Egypt. Now we are in chapter 41, verse 37. So the king and his officials approved this plan, and he said to them, "We will never find a man better than Joseph, a man who has God's spirit in him." The king said to Joseph, "God has shown you all this so that it is obvious that you have greater wisdom and insight than anyone else. I will put you in charge of my country, and all my people will obey your order. Your authority will be second only to mine. I now appoint you governor over all Egypt." The king removed from his finger the ring engraved with royal seal, and put it in Joseph's finger. He put a fine linen robe on him and placed a gold chain round his neck. He gave him the second royal chariot to ride in, and his guard of honor went ahead of him and cried out, "Make way, make way." And so Joseph was appointed governor over all Egypt. The king said to him, "I am the king, and no one in all Egypt shall so much as lift a hand or a foot without your permission." He gave Joseph the Egyptian name Zephenath Pena, uh, and he gave him a wife, Esnath, the daughter of Potiphera, a priest in the city of Heliopolis. Joseph was 30 years old when he began to serve the king of Egypt. He filled the king's court and traveled. He left the king's court and traveled all over the land. During the 7 years of plenty, the land produced abundant crops, all of which Joseph collected and stored in cities. In each city, he stored the food from the fields around it. There was so much corn that Joseph stopped measuring it, and it was like the sand of the sea. So now we are in chapter 41, verse 50. Before the years of famine came, Joseph had two sons by Esnath. He said, "God had made me forget all my sufferings and all my father's family." So he named his first son Manasseh. He also said, "God has given me children in the land of my trouble." So he named his second son Ephraim. So Joseph now has two sons. The first one, he has two sons through Esnath, his wife, and the first one he is naming Manasseh, and the second one is named as Ephraim. The 7 years of plenty that the land of Egypt had enjoyed came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began just as Joseph had said. There was famine in every other country, but there was food throughout in Egypt. When the Egyptians began to be hungry, they cried out to the king for food, so he ordered them to go to Joseph and do what he told them. The famine grew worse and spread all over the whole country, so Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold corn to the Egyptians. People came to Egypt from all over the world to buy corn from Joseph because the famine was severe everywhere. So now we are entering into the 42nd chapter. Joseph's brother go to Egypt to buy corn. So when Joseph learned that there was corn in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why don't you do something? I hear that there is corn in Egypt. Go there and buy some to keep us from starving to death." So Joseph's 10 half brothers went to buy corn in Egypt. So here Joseph's 10 half brothers means all the brothers except Benjamin go to buy corns in Egypt, buy corn in Egypt. But Jacob did not send his Joseph's full brother Benjamin with him because he was afraid that something might happen to him. The sons of Jacob came with others to buy corn because there was a famine in the land of Canaan. Joseph, as the governor of the land of Egypt, was selling corn to the people from all over the world. Joseph's brother came and bowed down before him with their faces to the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized him, but he acted as if he did not know them. He asked them harshly, "Where do you come from?" "We have come from the Canaan to buy food. From Canaan to buy food," they answered. Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. He remembered the dreams he had dreamt and about them. He had dreamt about them and said, "You are the spies. You have come to find out where our country is weak." "No, sir," they answered. "We have come as your slaves to buy food." "We are all brothers. We are not spies, sir. We are honest men." Joseph said to them, "No, you have come to find out where your country is weak." They said, "We were 12 brothers in all. We were 12 brothers in all, sir, sons of the same man in the land of Canaan. One brother is dead, and the youngest is now with our father." "It is just as I said," Joseph answered. "You are spies. This is how you will be tested. I swear by the name of the king that you will never leave unless your youngest brother comes here. One of you must go and get him. The rest of you will be kept under guard until the truth of what you can say can be tested. Otherwise, as sure as the king lives, you are spies." Then he put them in prison for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, "I am a God-fearing man, and I'll spare your lives on one condition. To prove that you're honest, one of you will stay in the prison and where you have been kept. The rest of you may go and take back to your starving families the corn you had bought. Then you must bring your youngest brother to me. This will prove that you have been telling the truth, and I will not put you to death." They agreed to this and said to one another, "Yes, now we are suffering the consequences of what we did to your brother. We saw the great trouble that he was in when he begged for help, but we would not listen. This is why we are in the trouble now." Reuben said, "I told you not to harm the boy, but you didn't listen, and though we are being paid back for his death." Joseph understood what he was saying, what they said, but they did not know it, because they had been speaking to him through an interpreter. Joseph left them and began to cry. When he was able to speak again, he came back, picked out Simeon, and up tied up in front of them, and had him tied up in front of them. Joseph's brother returned to Canaan. So now Joseph gave orders to his brothers packs with corn to put each man's money back in the sack, to give them and to give them food for the journey. This was done. The brothers loaded the donkeys with the corn they had bought, and they left. At the place where they spent the night, one of them opened his sack to feed his donkey, and they found his money at the top of the sack. "My money has been returned to me," he called to his brothers. "Here it is in my sack." Their hearts sank, and in fear they asked one another, "What has the God done to us?" When they came to their father Jacob in Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them. "The governor of Egypt spoke harshly to us and accused us of spying against his country." We are not spies," we answered. "We are honest men. We were 12 brothers in all, sons of the same father. One brother is dead, and the youngest is still in Canaan with our father." The man answered, "This is how I'll find out if you are honest men. One of you will stay with me, the rest will take corn for your starving families and leave. Bring your youngest brother to me, then I will know that you are not spies but honest men. I I will give your brother back to you, and you can stay here and trade. Then, when they emptied out sacks, every one of them found his bag of money. And when they saw the money, they and their father Jacob were afraid. Their father said to him, "Do you want to make me lose all my children? Joseph is gone, Simeon is gone, and now you want to take away Benjamin? I am the one who suffers." Reuben said to his father, if you do not bring Benjamin, if I do not bring Benjamin back to you, you can kill my two sons. Put him in my care, and I'll bring him back." But Jacob said, "My son cannot go with you. His brother is dead, and he is the only one left. Something might happen to him on the way. I am old man. I am an old man, and the sorrow you would cause on me would kill me." So now we are in chapter 43. Joseph's brother returned to Egypt with Benjamin. The famine in Canaan got worse, and when the family of Jacob had eaten all the corn which had been brought from Egypt, Jacob said to his sons, Go back and buy a little food for us." Judah said to him, "The man sternly warned us that we would not be admitted to his presence unless we had our brother with us. If you are willing to send our brother with us, we will go and buy food for you. If you are not willing, we will not go, because the man told us we would not be admitted to his presence unless our brother was with us." Jacob said, "Why did you cause me so much trouble by telling the man that you had another brother?" They answered, "The man kept asking about us and our family. Is your father still living? Have you got your brother?" We had to answer his questions. How could we know that he would tell us to bring our brother with us? Judah said to his father, "Send the boy with me, and we will leave at once. Then none of us will starve to death. I will pledge my own life, and you can hold me responsible for him. If I do not bring him back to you safe and sound, I will always bear the blame. And if I had not waited so long, we could have been there and back twice by now." Their father said to them, "If that is how it has to be, then take the best products of the land in your packs as a present to the governor: a little raisin, a little honey, spices, pistachio nuts, and almonds. Take with you also twice as much money, because you must take back the money that was returned in the top of your sacks. Maybe it was a mistake. Take your brother and return at once. May Almighty God cause the man to have pity on you, so that he will give Benjamin and your father and your brother back to you. As for me, I must not lose my children. I must lose them. As for me, I must lose my children. I must lose them." So the brothers took the gifts. Just a minute. Yeah. "As for me, if I must lose my children, I must lose them." So the brothers took the gifts and twice as much money, and set out for Egypt with Benjamin. There they presented themselves to Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the servant in charge of his house, "Take these men to my house. They are going to eat with me at noon. So kill an animal and prepare it." The servant did as he was commanded and took the brothers to Joseph's house. So now we are in chapter number 43, verse 18. As they were being brought to the house, they were afraid and thought, "We are being brought here because of the money that was returned in our sacks for the first time. They will suddenly attack us, take our donkeys, and make us their slaves." So at the door of the house, they said to the servant in charge, If you please, sir, we came here once before to buy food. When we set up camp on the way home, we opened our sacks, and each man found his money in the top of his sack, and every bit of it. We have brought it back to you. We have also brought some money with us to buy more food. We do not know who put our money back into the sacks." The servant said, "Don't worry, don't be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, must have put the money in your sacks for you. I received your payment." Then he brought Simeon to them. The servant took the brothers into the house. He gave them water so that they could wash their feet, and he fed the donkeys. He got their gifts ready to present to Jacob when he arrived at noon, because they had been told that they were to eat with him. When Joseph, when Joseph, I mean, where is it? When Joseph got home, they took the gifts in the house to him and bowed down to the ground before him. He asked about their health and said, "You told me about your old father. How is he? Is he still alive and well?" They answered, "Your humble servant, our father, is still alive and well." And they knelt and bowed before him. When Joseph said, "His brother Benjamin," he said, "So this is your youngest brother, the one you told me about. God bless you, my son." Then Joseph left suddenly because his heart was full of tender feelings of his brother. He was about to break down, so he went to his room and cried. After he had washed his face, he came out and controlling himself, he ordered the meal to be served. Joseph was served at one table and his brother at the another. The Egyptians who were eating were served separately because they considered it beneath their dignity to eat with Hebrews. The brothers had been seated at table facing Joseph in the order of their age, from the eldest to the youngest. When they saw how they had been seated, they looked at one another in amazement. Food was served to them from Joseph's table, and Benjamin was served 5 times as much as the rest of them. So they ate and drank with Joseph until they were drunk. The missing cup. Now we are in chapter number 44 of Genesis. Joseph commanded the servant in charge of his house, "Fill the men's sacks with as much as food as they can carry, and put each man's money in the top of his sack. Put my silver cup in the top of the youngest brother's sack, together with the money for his corn." He did as he was told. Early in the morning, the brothers were set out on their way with their donkeys. When they had gone only a short distance from the city, Joseph said to his servant in charge of his house, "Hurry after those men. When you catch up with them, ask them, 'Why have you paid back evil for good? Why did you steal my master's silver cup? It is the one he drinks from, the one he uses for divination. You have committed a serious crime.'" When the servant caught up with them, he repeated these words. They answered, They answered to them, "What do you mean, sir, by talking like this? We swear that we have done no such thing. You know that we brought back to you from the land of Canaan the money we found in the top of our sacks. So why then we steal silver or gold from your master's house? Sir, if any one of us is found to have it, he will be put to death, and the rest of us will become your slaves." He said, "I agree. But the only one who has taken the cup will become my slave, and the rest of you can go free." So they quickly lowered these sacks to ground, and each man opened his sack. Joseph's servant searched carefully, beginning with the eldest and ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. The brothers tore their clothes in sorrow and loaded their donkeys and returned to the city. When Judah and his brother came to Joseph's house, he was still there. They bowed down before him, and Joseph said, "What have you done? Didn't you know that a man in my position could find out by practicing divination? What can uh, what can you say to you, sir? What can we say to you, sir?" Judah answered, "How can we argue? How can we clear ourselves? God has uncovered our guilt. All of us are now your slaves, and not uh, God has uncovered our guilt. All of us now your slaves, and not just the one uh, with whom the cup was found." Joseph said, "Oh no, I would never do that. Only the one who had the cup will be my slave. The rest of you may go back and sound to your father." Judah pleased to Benjamin. Judah went up to Joseph and said, "Please, sir, allow me to speak with you freely. Don't be angry with me, and you are like the king himself. Sir, you asked us, 'Have you got a father or another brother?' We answered, 'We have a father who is old and younger brother born to him in his old age.' The boy's brother is dead, and he is the only one of his mother's children still alive. His father loves him very much, so you told us to bring him here so that you could see him, and we answered that the boy could not leave his father. If he did, his father would die. Then you said, you will not be admitted to my presence again unless your youngest brother comes with you. When we went back to our father, we told him what you said. Then he told us to return and buy a little food. We answered, we cannot go. We will not be admitted to the man's presence unless our youngest brother is with us. So we can go only if the youngest brother goes also. Our father said to us, you know that my wife Rachel bore me only two sons. One of them has already left. He must have been torn to pieces by wild animals because I have not seen him since he left. If you take this one from me now and something happens to him, the sorrow you would cause me would kill me at my old age, that is, old as I am. And now, Sir Judah continued, if I go back to my father without the boy, as soon as he sees that the boy is not with me, he will die. His life is, uh, and his life is wrapped up with the life of the boy, and he is so old that the sorrow would kill him. The sorrow we would cause him would kill him. What is more, I pledged my life to my father for the boy. I told him that if I did not bring the boy back to him, I would bear the blame all my life. And now, sir, I will stay here as your slave in place of the boy. Let him go back with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I cannot bear to see this disaster come upon my father. So now we are coming into chapter 45. Joseph tells his brother who he is. Joseph was no longer able to control his feelings in front of his servants, so he ordered them all to leave the room. So no one else was with him. When Joseph told his brother who he was, he cried with such loud sobs that the Egyptians heard it, and news was taken to the king's palace. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But when his brothers heard this, they were so terrified that they could not answer. Then Joseph said to them, please come closer. They did and said, I am your brother. And he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Now do not be upset or blame yourself because you sold me here. It was really God who sent me ahead of you and saved people's lives. This is only the second year of famine in the land. There will be 5 more years in which there will be neither plowing nor reaping. God sent me ahead of you to rescue you in the amazing way and to make sure that you and your descendants survive. So it was not really you who sent me here, but the God. He has made me the king's highest official. I am in charge of his whole country. I am the ruler of all Egypt. Now hurry back to my father and tell him that this is what his son Joseph says. God has made me ruler of all Egypt. Come to me without delay. You can live in the region of Goshen, where you can be near me. You, your children and your grandchildren, your sheep, your goats, your cattle, and everything else that you have. If you are in Goshen, I can take care of you. There will be still 5 years of famine, and I do not want your family and your livestock to starve. Joseph continued, now all of you and you too, Benjamin, can see that I am really Joseph. Tell my father how powerful I am here in Egypt and tell him about everything you have seen. Then hurry and bring him here. So now Joseph asked his brothers to tell his father who he is, and to tell his father that he is Joseph, and he says his father to bring all his livestock, his sheep, his cattle, and all his family to Egypt and to live in the region of Goshen so that he could be near to them. So Joseph continued, now all of you, just a minute. He threw his arms around his brother Benjamin and began to cry. Benjamin also cried as he hugged him. Then still weeping, he embraced each of his brother and kissed them. After that his brother began to talk with him. When the news reached the palace, that Joseph's brother had come, the king and his officials were pleased. He said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers to load their animals and return to the land of Canaan. Let them get their father and their families and come back here. I will give them the best land in Egypt, and they will have more than enough to live on. Tell them also to take wagons with them from Egypt and for their wives and small children, and to bring their father with them. They are not to worry about leaving their possessions behind. The best in the whole land of Egypt will be theirs." Jacob's sons did as they were told. Joseph gave them wagons as the king had ordered and food for the journey. He also gave each of them a change of clothes, but he gave Benjamin 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of clothes. He sent his father 10 donkeys loaded with the best Egyptian goods and the 10 donkeys loaded with corn bread and other food for the journey. Then he sent his brothers off and they left. He said to them, "Don't quarrel on the way." Then they left Egypt and went back home to their father Jacob in Canaan. "Joseph is still alive," they told him. "He is the ruler of all Egypt." Joseph was stunned and could not believe them. Just think the feeling that Jacob would have after must be after a long period of time. Joseph comes to know that Jacob comes to know that his son Joseph is still alive, because he is in the intention that his son Joseph is dead already, but now he comes to know that his son is still alive. And just think, it would literally have been a great suspense for him. So, but when they told him all that Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the wagons which Joseph had sent to take him to Egypt, he recovered from the shock. "My son Joseph is still alive," he said. "This is all I could ask for. I must go and see him before I die." So now we are entering into chapter number 46. Jacob and his family go to Egypt. So Jacob packed all he had and went to Beersheba, where he offered sacrifice to the God of his father Isaac. God spoke to him in a vision at night and called, "Jacob, Jacob." "Yes, here I am," he answered. "I am God and the God of your father," he said. "Do not be afraid to go to Egypt. I will make your descendants a great nation there. I will go with you to Egypt, and I will bring your descendants back to this land. Joseph will be with you when you die." So Jacob set out from Beersheba. His sons put him their small children and their wives in the wagons which the king of Egypt had sent. They took their livestock and the possessions they had acquired in Canaan and went to Egypt. Jacob took all the descendants with him, his sons, his grandsons, his daughters, his granddaughters. The member of Jacob's family who went to Egypt with him were his eldest son Reuben and Reuben's sons, Hanok, Palu, Hezron, Carmi, Simeon, and his sons Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Shaul, the son of Canaanite woman. So Levi and his sons Gershon, Kotan, and Merari. Judah and his sons Shelah, Perza, and Zerah. Judah's other sons were Er and Ona had died in Canaan. Yeah, we had seen that incident before, that Er and Onan had died. Perez's son were Hezron and Hamul. Issachar had his sons Tola, Pua, Jashub, and Shimron. Zebulun and his sons Sered, Elon, Jalil. These are the sons that Leah bore to Jacob in Mesopotamia, besides his daughter Dinah. In all, his descendants by Leah numbered 33. Gad and his sons Zephon, Hagi, Shuni, Esbon, Eri, Arod, and Areli. Asher and his sons Imna, Ishwa, Ishvi, Beria, and their sister Sere. Beria's son were Heber, Malkiel. These 16 are the descendants of Jacob by Zilpah, the slave girl whom Laban gave to his father Leah. Jacob's father Rachel bore him 2 sons, Joseph and Benjamin. In Egypt, Joseph had 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim by Esnath, the daughter of Potiphar, a priest in Heliopolis. Benjamin's son were Bela, Bekar, Ashbel, Gera, Nanam, Ehi, Rosh, Muppim, Huppim, and Arth. These 14 are the descendants of Jacob by Rachel. Dan and his son Hushim, Naphtali and his sons Jazil, Guni, Jezer, and Shilem. These 7 are the descendants of Jacob by Bilhah, the slave girl whom Laban gave to his daughter Rachel. The total number of direct descendants of Jacob who went to Egypt was 66, wives, not including his sons' wives. 2 sons were born to Joseph in Egypt, bringing to 70 the total number of Jacob's family who went there. So now we are in the 46th chapter, verse 28. Jacob and his family in Egypt. So Jacob sent Judah ahead to ask Joseph to meet them in Goshen. When they arrived, Joseph got into his chariot and went to Goshen to meet his father. When they met Joseph, Joseph threw his arms around his father's neck and cried for a long time. Jacob said to Joseph, I am ready to die now that I have seen you and know that you are still alive. Then Joseph said to his brothers and the rest of his father's family, I must go and tell the king that my brothers and all my father's family who were living in Canaan have come to me. I will tell him that you are my shepherds and take care of livestock, and that you can have brought your life, flocks and herds and everything else that belongs to you. When the king calls for you and asks what your occupation is, be sure that you tell him that you have taken care of livestock all your life, just as your ancestors did. In this way, he will let you live in the region of Goshen. Joseph said this because Egyptians will have nothing to do with shepherds. So this is the end of the 46th chapter and also the end of the 1 hour live session. So let us continue with the 47th chapter in the next live session. There is only 50 chapters in Genesis. So in the next chapter we would be mostly starting the chapter of Exodus and also completing starting the book of Exodus and mostly completing the book of Genesis. So if you have no time, I had already said this in the previous live session that if you have no time, you can watch these videos in 2x speed after the video has been uploaded. So the video will be processing until I think 12 hours. Yeah, 12 hours from now it will be processing. Nearly 9 a.m. tomorrow or exactly at 12 p.m. the video will be uploaded and it will be public. So you can watch the video at that time. So you can watch it at 2x speed if you wish, and you'll be able to complete the Bible in exactly half the time that we are completing in the live session. So thank you, bye everyone, and I'll meet you again in the next live session. Until then, bye.